Welcome to In His Grip with Dr. Chuck F. Betters, produced by Marking Ministries. Each In His Grip message is designed to help turn your hearts toward Jesus and equip you to walk by faith. Let's join Dr. Betters in the sanctuary as he preaches the series, Treasures of Faith.
There is a demon of materialism, and he's running loose in the church. He's running loose. And those of you sitting here right now who even know Jesus Christ, you've bowed to that cow. You've bowed to that bull. You live for power and money. You live for more power, more money. Now, there is nothing wrong with wealth. There's nothing wrong with investment. There's nothing wrong with providing for your families. There's nothing wrong with being wise. But there is something mighty wrong when the Apis bull becomes your God. The Bible's very clear. Deuteronomy 8:13 and 14 says, you know what money will do? It'll cause you to forget God. It'll cause you to forget him. You know what 1 Timothy 6:9 says? The love of money will open you up to a whole host of powerful temptations that you didn't have before. You know what Proverbs 11:24 says? More money leads to more stinginess. You don't believe that? Ever watch poor people when it comes to giving versus rich people when it comes to giving? Now, that's not a broad brush that applies to everybody. But just let me ask you a question. The more money you have made, have you been sacrificial in your giving as the result of making more money? Or have you held on to more of it? As your income has grown, as you become one of those wonderful baby boomers, you know, where you are now the most powerful segment of society today, you are the most significant demographic group in society today. As your income has risen, what have you done to serve the cause of Christ? Versus the time when you started out in the 60s with your first job, when you were on fire for Christ, when the only thing that mattered to you was whether or not you were going to get to that Friday night Bible study on the campus, where the only thing that mattered to you was whether or not your mother and your father knew the Lord and your neighbor knew the Lord. You boomers know what I'm talking about? When there was an excitement in your faith, an excitement in your prayer life, almost a naivety, almost a simplicity, an innocence of faith. You didn't even know to be scared. You weren't scared because you didn't know to be scared. We served in the inner city of Philadelphia, in the ghetto, for years in the ghetto of Philadelphia. And I can't remember one time that we honestly were short-circuited in ministry because we were scared. Now when I drive through that area, I have to lock my doors. I've become wiser. I'm much wiser now. I'm much more afraid now. I'm afraid I'll get shot. I'm afraid somebody will jump me, but I wasn't afraid then. Why? What's changed? What happens to us as we get older? Why is our faith lessened with age? Why is it that new Christians who are on fire for Christ and don't even know the meaning of the word can't or won't? Why is it that it takes a year or so of exposure to mature Christians for them to become just like us who are, quote, mature, unquote, and walk in faithlessness and despair rather than faith and vigor? They learn it from us. Ecclesiastes 5:19 tells us that although money cannot be destructive necessarily, there are some inherent dangers. Abraham was rich, Isaac was rich, Jacob was rich. God increased them with many goods. The Apostle Paul was rich. Now, he spent most of his life savings on trials and defending himself in court. That's why he knew how to suffer loss as well. But there was a perspective these men had on money, on materialism. You see, life in the Spirit will keep our focus fixed. It'll keep our purpose clear. Those who are keeping step in the Spirit, those who are walking in stride with the Holy Spirit, they won't lose sight of this. They'll read the newspapers in the context of what God's doing, not in the context of what Wall Street is doing. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18 speaks of a concentrated keeping of our lives open toward God. Other things will obscure that concentration, but we can and should never be hurried out of abiding in Him. Never. We need to take a deep breath. We need to look at our lives and ask ourselves whether a life that is bent not on personal gain, but on the extravagance that comes from God, who delights in surprising His people, is what we are made of. You know, when you come to this passage in Exodus 9, actually Exodus, all the plagues, when God brings these 10 plagues down on Egypt, this is not so much a story about God showing favoritism to one nation as it is a war between a holy God and the gods who were the icons and idols that Egypt worshiped. And I believe we're engaged in that very same struggle. I believe what we're facing in the church today is an invisible war between the God of the Bible and the God of this world, between our Christ and Satan. I can't tell you how many times early on in our ministry, 30 years ago, where we didn't know whether we were going to eat the next week, how many times God made miraculous provisions for us. I mean, I'm talking miraculous provisions where, I actually prayed that, I shouldn't tell you this, but I'll tell you now. Just don't tell anybody, all right? There was one time that we did not know where we were going to get money for food. And we did not and would not ask our parents. When we decided to marry, it was our responsibility, not theirs. Now, you may disagree with that. You're wrong, I'm right. That doesn't matter. But there are many times that we wondered whether God was going to provide. And there were times when I'm sitting there writing out that tithe check. I thought, what are you doing? It's tithe or eat. Tithe or eat. Tithe or eat. Many times my wife would yank the tithe check out of my hand and put it into the offering plate saying, well, end this problem for you right now. She had more spiritual sense at times than I did. Tithe or eat. I remember one time the tithe check was the last money we had. And it was 2 more weeks before we would get paid again. I had no money. I have no money, nothing. I said, kiddingly, Lord, you got to kill somebody this week so I can get a funeral. See, I told you not to tell anybody. I actually said that. I said, Lord, you got to kill somebody so I can get a funeral. In those days, we lived in a community where the local funeral directors would call various pastors. There were 43 pastors in my community. 43. Now that meant that 1 out of every 43 times I would be called. And usually it was for funerals where nobody had a church attendance anywhere. And I remember, Lord, I don't know how you're going to do this one. We don't have any money. And I got 3 phone calls that week from the same funeral director to conduct 3 funerals for 3 people I did not know. And he paid me $25 for each of those funerals that fed us exactly for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, there were times where we had no Christmas presents to give our kids. I remember I got a call once from a woman whose young son, a mentally retarded boy, was dying in the hospital. He was 18 years old. It was my first experience watching somebody die. I'd never watched anybody die before. And I remember walking into that hospital room, and this young boy was in a coma. For some reason, his eyes were open, but he was not there. His eyes were open, but he wasn't there. And we stayed up with that young boy all night, and then he died. And I did the funeral for that family. It was one of my very first funerals. I didn't even know what to say. I was so scared. I mean, I was 21 years old when this was happening. 21. And I did that funeral and didn't see that family again until one Christmas Eve there came a knock on our door. And we opened up the door, and there was the mother and the brother and the sister of that young mentally retarded boy. And out there on that street of Philadelphia, on that sidewalk, they had that sidewalk filled with gifts for our daughter Heidi. All kinds of toys. We have movies of those toys. And I'm watching those movies, I'm saying, I remember where those toys came from. All those clothes, those dolls. This couple just opened it up and just poured it out there. I remember once we had another option. Lord, tithe or fix the car? Fix the car, tithe. Fix the car, tithe. Car blows up. Literally, it blew up in front of our house. Now a pastor needs a car. Fix the car, tithe. Fix the car, tithe. We tithed. I said, Lord, I don't have any wheels. I don't have any wheels. I just have to stay around here. You know I need a car. You know in the city I need a car. I can't go to school. I can't go to the hospital. I can't visit people. I can't do anything without a car. Lord, you know I need a car. Sunday morning I'm preaching in church. Guy comes up to me, says, Pastor, I want to talk to you about some music that I'm listening to. I want to make sure it's good music. Those were in my fundamentalist legalist days when I criticized everybody's music. There are a lot of tapes, by the way, going around that I wish weren't there. I hope you all know that. All right, that's a parenthesis. But he came over to the house that night. I listened to his music. I said, throw it away. It's horrible. And he's walking out the door and he says, thanks for the time you gave me. And he's walking down the steps and he's saying, oh, by the way, my wife and I, now nobody knew that the car blew up. Nobody knew. We told nobody. Tithe, fix the car. Tithe, fix the car. Lord, I don't have any money. Tithe. The only two people who knew that were this woman on the front row and me. And the car. The car knew it. He's walking off the porch. He says, oh, by the way, my wife Geraldine and I are going to give you a car. And he keeps walking. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Back up here. You said what? He says, we have a car. We bought this car. We don't really need this. We have two cars now. We don't really need the car. He says, you want it? I said, sure. He says, well, come on over tomorrow. I said, I don't have any way to get there. He says, well, I'll come pick you up. So he comes and picks me up in this old junker. And I thought, well, this is the car. This is the car he's going to give me, this old junker. But Lord, that's all right. You give me junk, that's fine. At least I have wheels now. Tithe, fix the car. Tithe, fix the car. We'll take the junker. We walk over to his house, and I said, this is very generous of you to give me this car. He says, oh, that's not the car I'm giving you. He says, we bought this brand new one over here. And he says, we really shouldn't have bought that car. This car had 200 miles on it. And he gave us this brand new car. Took me over to the bank right on the spot. Signed over the car to me. He didn't know about that. God did. Now, are you going to get cars? Are you going to have funerals? Are you going to have all this money feed into your pockets because you tithe? That's not the point here. That's not the point. You know what's exciting about all this is I review my life now as a boomer. I now look back and I realized that as my income went up, the miraculous provisions went down. As my income went up, the miraculous provisions went down. It was as though God is saying, I'll take care of you when you can't take care of yourself, but when you can take care of yourself, now I expect you to do the same thing in the use of your money here in order to honor me for what I've done back here. Now, I got to tell you, I'm going to stand here openly and honestly confess to you, that's a struggle for me. I'm still materialistic. I still struggle with, You know, you're writing out that check and you look at it and you say, I still struggle with that. But I realize now that the struggle is with an icon. The struggle's with an idol. The struggle's with the Apis bull. The struggle's with the taw cow. That's what it's with. Hathor. Do I really love him? Do I really love him? Am I willing to keep my life open toward moving in step with the Spirit? Is my life bent on personal gain, or is my life bent on godly extravagance? I'd rather have that godly extravagance. You see, we learned that our focus must be that our citizenship's in another kingdom. We've learned that over the years. We've seen too much. Oh yeah, the struggle's still there. The old flesh is still there. The old draw's still there. The drive for power and success and money, those are things that I think all of us struggle with to one degree or another. I think the first step in overcoming it is admitting it. You've got to come face to face with God and say, God, this is a struggle. This is a struggle I'm having. There are things in my life more important than you. There are issues in my life that are more important than loving you. My citizenship and my power is in this world, Lord, not in your world. And I struggle with that. The Lord wraps his arms around us and he says, I want to fill you with a godly extravagance. I want to surprise you. I want to surprise you. Now, I'm going to share something with you. What I've learned is that God doesn't financially surprise Sharon and I anymore. He doesn't do that. He doesn't need to do that. You folks pay me a good salary, and I make a very good, decent living, and we've invested very wisely, and God has prospered us in that regard. He doesn't surprise us that way anymore. We sat here in this church. I watched my children conduct my son's funeral up here. I watched their hearts break while my heart was breaking and still does. I watched your hearts break for us. You walk through your own pain. You've got your pain just like I've got mine. And over these past 5 years, I have watched God work an extravagant miracle in our home. He has surprised me. He did what I didn't think he could do. Somehow or another, he has turned our sorrow into joy. Now, don't walk off here mistaking something. We still grieve, and we still mourn, and we still miss our son. And I still cry, and my wife still cries. But what God has done, he has said to us, I am going to move you into positions of ministry that you don't want to go. And now you're going to struggle not with tithe or eat, tithe or fix the car. You don't need to struggle with those things anymore. You're going to struggle with something else. Do I walk out in obedience and minister where I don't want to? Or do I trust you that you're going to carry me into areas where you are going to receive honor and glory in ways I can't dream possible? We have been placed into a position of leadership, not only here, but outside of this place, and we have had the opportunity to minister to hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of people, where we go kicking, scratching, and clawing, but experience the extravagance of God's blessing. We walk away from these things exhausted. My wife called me the other night from a conference she was doing. And she was doing this conference, and she called, and I could tell from her voice that she was at the verge of crying. I said, what's the matter? And she said, well, I just poured my heart out to these women. I told them our story, because we believe that's what God has called us to do, is to go out and tell our story and to show how his grace is at work. And we know that when we go to these places, there are many hurting people there struggling with grave, grave issues. And she says, I just poured out my heart. I just emptied my soul out to these women. And I sat down after I gave the first talk. And the leader of the conference stood up and said, well, now, ladies, we need to shift gears here. Not sensitive to the movement of the Spirit at all. And they started playing games. They had these funny little silly games that the ladies were going to play. Here is a woman who just poured out her spleen. And I said, well, where are you now? She says, I went back to my room. And we prayed together on the phone, and I reminded her she's there to tell the story. Now, could God take that and turn it around? Could he take it and turn it around? The very next day, there was a line of 150 women waiting to talk to her. Broken hearts, broken bodies, broken marriages, broken relationships, women who have lost children, women who are experiencing all sorts of pain. And God was saying to her, you be faithful. Do what I've called you to do in spite of how you feel. In spite of how you feel. It's not tithe or eat anymore. It's obey or not obey. It's follow after me or do it your way. Do what I've called you to do in spite of how you feel or don't. And God honored that commitment. Now, we have seen him do that in the past 5 years, time and time and time and time and time again. See, God delights in being extravagant with his children. I don't want to worship Apis or Ptah or Hathor. I don't want to worship the gods of materialism, power, and control. I want to experience the presence and the power and the might of God's Spirit in my life. Is that what you want? Is that what you want more than anything else? If that's what you desire more than anything else, then these little debates have got to end. This little debate about the right hand or the left hand's got to end. Now, if we can't even do the easy things like tithe, how are we going to face death or disease or sudden loss or a scorch mark? So God hits Egypt with the plague. The epidemic strikes. The god Imhotep, the god of medicine and the guardian of the healing sciences couldn't help. The animals laid there as testimonies, dead carcasses all over Egypt as testimonies of the powerless of iconoclasm. Now, what are the icons sitting on your mantle? What are the icons? Now, we're all at different levels. We're all at different levels. Some of you are much more spiritually advanced than I'll ever be. Some of you are still babes in the Lord. At your level, evaluate where you are. What are the icons you worship? What are the gods you are bowing to? Even in this church, there are people who serve the God of the Hebrews and people who serve the God of the Egyptians. There are believers and there are non-believers. Now the question is, the key question for you, how can you ever hope to experience God's surprises, who delights in surprising us? We can't even obey him with the basic infrastructures of our life. I told the couples this morning as I close, we talked in our class, our Sunday school class, marriage and family class. I said, do you know how many times the Bible makes it clear that a fractured relationship between a husband and a wife hinders effective worship? Don't even bother worshiping me if you can't love your wife, if you can't love your husband. Go and get that baby cleared up first, and then you come to me. I'll be here waiting for you. But let's do first things first. So the first thing that needs to happen, you need to rip the icons down. You need to figure out what they are, and you need to rip them down. And then you need to say to God, now God, it's not going to be a debate anymore. Oh yeah, I'll still struggle. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? But then you can stand back and you can watch God do an amazing miracle in your life. Some of you guys, you don't spend any time with your wife. You're too busy playing. So all you want to do is play. You go to work and then you play. Go to work and play. Go to work and play. Watch me, Mommy. I'm going to play. And you've married your mother. You've married your mother. And all you want her for is to fill your needs up, change your diapers, give you your bottle, make sure that you have plenty of time to play. And she's sitting home starving for you. And you throw her a few crumbs here and a few crumbs there and say, be content with that. I've got to play. You better duck, brother. When you abuse your wife that way, you better duck. Because a holy God who said to you in Malachi 2 that you have broken faith with her is standing there ready and waiting either for you to repent or you'd better duck. So your icon has become your little play toy or whatever it is. You fill in the blanks. But understand that God is a God who desires to pour out his extravagance on you and to surprise you like a father does his kids at Christmas time.
Thank you for listening. For the complete sermon, please visit markinc.org and click In His Grip. Join Dr. Chuck F. Betters in the sanctuary from Monday to Thursday on the In His Grip podcast.